Recently, there was a sighting in the high desert of southern Nevada. Residents of Las Vegas noticed something that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared just as easily as it manifested. It's rare to be able to get the opportunity to talk to the person who filmed, in my opinion, the best video of the footage. I also run a Las Vegas UFO Hunters official FB page site on Facebook, and I had a gentleman post some great footage as he walked to the store of this craft. I didn't think you could get any better footage than that. But then, through coincidence and synchronicity, I was contacted by the same people who had their footage posted on the Coast to Coast website. It is, in my opinion, the best footage. They seem to live in a spot that is very apt to be able to capture these things. It is along a mountainside and actually, believe it or not, very close to my digs in Las Vegas, where I stay when I'm in southern Nevada. And we're just around the mountain from one another. They definitely got the best view of anybody I've seen. I can't wait to discuss this with Scott. He is a great guy, Las Vegas local, and I am going to see what exactly we were dealing with here. Some claim, maybe it's something from Area 51. I've had sources come forward and tell me that people in positions higher up believe that it was some exotic propulsion tests coming out of Creech Air Force Base. However, it's difficult to tell. And when it comes to the most secret domestic military facilities in our country, I'm not about to start picking that apart. So, in my opinion, it looked like it was just over Las Vegas, and in the opinion of many other residents, it appeared the same. I'm sticking with that, and I'm going to be joined by a fellow podcast host, Jeff Rennell. You may know him from E-Talk TV. He has a great podcast where he covers a variety of different subjects. Very knowledgeable researcher and investigator. He also grew up in Las Vegas, although he calls Utah home now, and he is going to help me delve into this. Jeff is also part of the research team that goes up to Space Wolf Research and often investigates high strangeness and anomalies as they pop up, so I just figured two heads are better than one when it comes to such a unique opportunity to talk to somebody so close to the point when they filmed this anomaly. And it's an anomaly that, in my opinion, rivals the Phoenix Lights. It's amazing footage, and it's recent. I mean, this just happened, so buckle up for a bumpy ride into the cosmos and genre of advanced military science and or extraterrestrial technology. Blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Blast off on another epic episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, aka Hero Paranormal, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, bringing you an unbelievable episode tonight. really quick. If you haven't been over to YouTube and subscribed to Hero Paranormal, please go over to YouTube, search for Hero Paranormal, like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I will never be monetized on YouTube for a variety of reasons. However, if you like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, it's the only way I can break through the algorithm of control, bust through that glass ceiling, and at the very least, have people hear the podcasts. It would be a big help to me. And if you have not checked out the content behind the paywall, please go to Patreon and search for Hero Paranormal. For the price of a cup of coffee a month, you get all of the content behind the paywall, and there's a ton of it. You can also access that through heroparanormal.com. I'm kind of ditching on Podbean, and I'm going to quit using that hosting service. They lost a bunch of episodes, they cost too much, and their reach seems limited, in my opinion. So, moving everything over to Patreon. You can access everything at heroparanormal.com. There is at least one secret base in America's high desert, just north of Las Vegas, Nevada, where top-level technologies are tested and strategic missions and services are rumored to be taking place. It is known by many names: Groom Lake, S4, but let's get to the goods. Most people know it as Area 51. Those who have spoken of it include diplomats, spies, statesmen, politicians, and even your random scientist who is believed by few. I'm talking about none other than Bob Lazar. Bob claimed that there was craft that was reverse engineered from extraterrestrial craft and being tested, evaluated, and worked on at Area 51, specifically in a location known as S4. Whether that has any validity or not is not anything I want to get into. However, officially, there does seem to be a lot of advanced flying aircraft which continues to be classified being tested at the base, a secret facility in the middle of the Nevada desert. Is it possible that advanced technologies are being tested and flown directly over the closest large metropolitan area nearby, none other than Sin City, the treasure trove of gambling, casinos, shopping, nightlife, food, and the adult Disneyland everyone wants to come visit? Well, it's an extremely delicate subject to tackle, but that's exactly what we are going to discuss. Jeff Rennell and myself are going to speak with Scott, who had the good luck, positioning, and amazing viewpoint to not only get the closest, clearest video footage of the anomaly in the skies over Las Vegas, which I believe rivaled the Phoenix Lights. However, we're going to get his opinion on what he thinks it was, how it acted, reacted, manifested, disappeared, and all of the above. I've spoken to a few people who witnessed it, but none got a better view than Scott. And we, of course, have the very talented Jeff Rennell, who runs eTalk TV. That's ETALK.TV. He has a great podcast. Check it out. And he knows his stuff. He was born and raised in Vegas. So I think we're going to have good perspectives in the mix to try to get an honest view of what took place and do so within close proximity of the actual event and the video recording of said craft. Can't wait to get into this and talk to him about it. Scott Tappe, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. And we also have Jeff Rennell here with us. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, you're cutting in and out a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll get it figured out. So, Scott, to be honest, you captured something recently that was something that I think got global attention because not only, in my opinion, does it seem eerily similar to the Phoenix Lights, but it happened over a very major metropolitan area. And I just want to give you a little bit of time to explain your location, where you gathered the footage, and what took place that evening.
Sure. Yep. I can get that for you right now, if you'd like. Okay. I just want to first give a little bit of the background information on where our house is in Las Vegas. We live in the northwest part of Las Vegas, and our house is essentially as far west as it can be because there's nothing on the backside of our house except a short, uneven patch of desert, and then that little short, uneven patch of desert takes you right to the Spring Mountains behind our house. And if anyone is familiar with say, Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area and where it's located in Las Vegas, the mountains right behind our house are actually part of the Red Rock National Conservation Area land, but they're just about 2 to 3 miles north of the main area that people actually go to when they visit. So we actually have a really nice view of the night sky and actually the city in front and all that. Since we're at the higher elevation and with the back of our house being far enough away from the city and the strip lights, so it actually affords us a really good view of the night sky, or as pretty much as good as it can be here, over the Spring Mountains that are to our west, the southwest, and the northwest. And oftentimes, many nights, we like to go out and take advantage of that location, and we watch the night sky, quite often from our back patio.
This is awesome. I know the area very well, and Jeff and I and other researchers have spoken about this area quite a bit. There was a gentleman who's also a neighbor of ours, and by ours I mean yourself, Scott, and my neighborhood are very close by. There's a gentleman named Steve Barone who has captured some interesting craft along this same part of town, but nothing quite as magnificent, in my opinion, as what you captured that night. So tell us a little bit about how it garnered your attention and what made you grab the camera.
Okay. It happened this past Thursday evening, April 27th, and it was just one of the nice nights where it was nice out and, well, fairly nice. It was a little windy, which I think you can tell from the video, but it was a nice enough evening to where we went out and it was clear sky. It was a darker sky, so we always like it when the moon's kind of not as bright as it is sometimes, because it helps kind of take a look at the night sky. So it was this past Thursday evening, the 27th of April. My partner, Diane, and I were out on our second floor back patio. We also have a patio on the lower level, but we get a little further view of things from the upper patio. And we were just doing some of the sky watching like we enjoy doing. And yes, we do watch for the occasional night sky things that just don't make much sense. Don't see them that often, but we do every once in a while. And we do know about the usual things in the sky, like what Venus is and what a lot of other things in the sky look like, such as how the International Space Station looks when it's moving through the sky. Plus, I have various night sky apps that, show me the usual stuff. So we're pretty familiar with what the sky is supposed to look like. That said, it was a little bit before 9 p.m. when Diane actually happened to notice a horizontal string of orangish lights that just suddenly appeared to her view, in her view, to the north of our house. I mean, looking to the north of our house. And it was in her line of sight because her view at the time where she was sitting was more to the west and northwest, and I was looking more to the west and southwest. Well, she saw that horizontal string of orangish lights suddenly appear, and then she immediately got my attention and says, hey, what's this? So that I could see it as well. And then I got up and stood, looked toward the north, and then I also saw this mysterious-looking object. We hadn't seen anything look like that in any of the other times we'd gone. We've seen a lot of other things, but this was the kind of the biggest, brightest thing that we'd ever seen so far. And I saw it with my naked eye, and it looked like 4 orangish-colored lights that were, at least from our view, aligned pretty tightly and mostly a horizontal alignment. And my immediate thought was like, wow, that's really, really strange. And the reason I thought that was just based upon how it looked, like I described, but also because we had never seen anything like that when we were sky watching. And actually where it was located just seemed kind of weird to me. And I thought that because I know what it looks like when I look in that direction during the day, which is a look or view that's looking pretty much straight north of our house, maybe give or take a little bit of degrees. And really the only thing in that view to the north is desert. And that's the case for a long, long, long way. In fact, I mean, I'm not at all saying I think there's any correlation with what we saw at the Area 51, but if someone walked 75 miles in that exact same direction where we saw the object, they'd be in Area 51. But that's just more of an interesting kind of thing. With that said, we both thought that what we saw Thursday night was definitely the closest and brightest mysterious something that we've seen yet. And we just literally stared at it the entire time it was in view, which time-wise I'd say was at most 3 minutes. So it was in our view for at most 3 minutes. Of course, I immediately got my iPhone out as soon as I saw it and took a couple photos. I actually took 4 or 5, but 3 of them or so just were duplicates or didn't look as good. And then I also took the 1-minute video. One thing I'll also say about how the object looked to us, as opposed to with our own eyes, as opposed to how it would appear, say, in a photo that wasn't zoomed in. Because I know for me, when I usually just take a regular photo of something that's way off in the distance, like a mountain or whatever, the photo or video always seems to make it look smaller than what you actually saw with your own eyes, so it doesn't really do justice to what you see in real time. So I would say that with our eyes, what we saw was approximately what the object would look like if it had been about 2 times zoomed in. In other words, the object was just bigger in our real view. So if somebody's looking at the photos, I mean, those are zoomed in, but I guess in the video you can see where I kind of zoom in and out just to kind of get some scale and things like that. And it looks smaller when I have no zoom in the video. But what we saw actually looked bigger, with, to our eyes. So I just wanted to point that out. If somebody's looking at the photos or videos and just kind of wondering. So we just continued to watch the object and just wondering what the heck it could be. And it was just one of the most interesting things. There's a lot of interesting things about it, but one of the most interesting things, the entire time we watched it, there was absolutely zero movement of the object, zero movement, none. And never moved, never went up, never went down, never went left, never went right. Obviously there was some flickering, but that was kind of, I think, caused by the dust in the air and this and that of the lights. But the object itself never moved. And it also seemed odd to me, at least to me, because it seemed to be so low in the sky. I mean, it probably doesn't mean anything, but it just seemed odd to me that it was so low. But I also know that, without actually knowing how far away it is or how big it is, you really can't tell like what altitude or how high it is at. But it just seemed low from our view. Then at about the 3-minute mark, like I said, at most, that the time was in our view, the object just suddenly, from the 3-minute mark from the time it appeared to the time it just disappeared was about 3 minutes. At that 3-minute mark, it literally just disappeared. But how it disappeared is kind of interesting and kind of amazing to me. That's one of the things that the only thing I've been kicking myself about since that is because I stopped taking the video about 30 seconds before the object began to disappear. And I was like, oh my God, why did I do that? But I did. But we know what we saw, and I'm going to try to describe it for you because it was really interesting. So as I said, the object did begin to slowly disappear. It didn't just vanish. It didn't go up or down or, fly away or anything like that. It just slowly began to disappear. But how it disappeared was really cool to watch. Like I said, it wasn't sudden or anything. But what happened is we were both watching it because we both said the same thing when it happened is, wow, that's cool what it's doing, is each of the 4, maybe 5, depending, I can't tell if there's 4 or 5 lights when I zoom in. If you're not zoomed in very much, it looks like 4 orangish lights, but there could be a possible 5th one. But each of the 4 lights simply faded out, and they faded out in unison, like identically at the same time. And that fading out process took about 7 seconds to complete. So in other words, from the time it took from the outer edges of each separate orangish light to begin disappearing until the very smallest, say, inner dot of each light went away, it took about 7 seconds. So each of the orangish lights essentially disappeared from the outside in. And again, it all happened, each light was in unison. And it was I don't know how to explain it, but it was just so amazing. You almost had this feeling like you just saw something that was really cool. It was just so amazing to watch. And then after the object faded away, we just looked at each other and said, wow, that was super cool to watch.
Man. And, I do think it's interesting, your location. I'm really glad that you shared that with the listeners. Mm-hmm. Because there's very little, it's just high desert, and it's literally, in my opinion, the nation's most secret domestic military facility. Of course, we have Nellis here closer to town, but the U.S. government really doesn't like talking about Area 51, and that I'm aware has never really fully admitted it exists. What do you think, Jeff? This is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, no, I find it very fascinating and very well described there, Scott. I really appreciate how you described it. Sure. I'm just wondering myself, Scott, have you seen some of the other videos that have been posted online?
Well, I haven't seen any other videos, but I haven't looked for them. But I saw some of the, the photos, the original photo. I'm not sure if it was a video or photo, and then some other photos and videos that came out shortly after that. And to me, it was clearly the same object, first of all, but at least in the ones I saw. I don't know if there were some that didn't look like it, but the ones I saw, it was clearly the same object. But most of the others that I saw, they were kind of like how I'd say city views, or like over the city, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So to contrast that with mine, which was not a city view. And another thing that I also found interesting, that I read a couple comments that many of the people who took the photos said the same thing as I said. It was there, and then it just wasn't there. So I don't know if they all had that same impression, but I read that many of them did. So that was interesting.
This is why I was asking that, is because, the other videos I saw, actually all the other ones except yours, was basically over the strip. Mm-hmm. And so I find it very fascinating. And also, their dates are 2 days earlier than what you're describing as well, too. Mm-hmm. They say theirs was on the 25th, or at least a couple that I've seen. Which, maybe they're wrong, I don't know. But if it's separate days, I'm just wondering if you've seen those videos and if you do relate that to what you were seeing.
Yeah, I don't. The ones I saw, I think, were the same day. I'm not exactly positive because I don't think it was necessarily clearly communicated in what I saw, so I can't really say. I would be interested, though, that any that were taken on Thursday, April 27th, whether it's a photo or video, because I actually looked at the timestamps of my photos and videos, and I was curious, like, if somehow there'd be a comparison done at some point of the timestamps of the other photos and videos from the different areas. Like, it might maybe figure something out about maybe how it moved or disappeared or whatever. I don't know. I was just curious about checking the times of photos and videos that were taken and kind of doing a comparison.
I think you're dead on, Scott. I think that kind of triangulating how it all happened and the timestamps and the dates, the ones that I have come across and had sent to me, one was from Henderson and the other one was a guy walking to the store. And like you guys said, these are both city views, and the ambient light kind of takes away from the actual footage. And it in no way compares to yours. Yours is so clear that you can actually kind of see the shape of the lights. You can see, how low it is, which in all the footage, it seems very low. But for something that low, you would think that there would be at least, some other telltale signs, maybe an outline, anything like that. Did you have any gut feeling or reaction when you saw it?
Gut reaction was that there was a structure behind it, but you couldn't just quite make it out. And then the red, that's my gut reaction. Then the reddish orange lights or whatever you want to call them were at like more or less, I don't want to, parts of it or corners of it or what. That's just my gut reaction when we were kind of looking at where the horizontal lights were located and whatnot. And one thing I do want to add for people who have looked at the couple photos or videos that I submitted to you, Ryan, I just want to clarify something about the dusty look in the photos and the video of the object, because I'm sure some people wondered that. As I said, the view in the photos and videos pretty much looks to the north of our house. And I'm sure, like I said, a couple people noticed, or many people or whatever, noticed some dustiness around the object. So here's what happened. There's a limestone quarry that is northwest of our house, and it takes up a goodly piece of desert and goes up to a certain spot at the base of the Spring Mountains. Well, for some strange reason, that quarry happened to be doing some work in the later evening that night, and I don't know why, because it's atypical. And whatever they were doing was kicking up quite a bit of desert dust. Plus, that night happened to be a very windy night. Like you hear that in the videos. You can kind of hear the effect of the wind. So it's kind of like a perfect storm, so to speak, to create kind of a low level of desert dust in the air. It was kind of just hovering over the surface. And if you look in a video above it, you can see, it's a nice bright black sky. So that's why I just wanted to mention that, because that's why in the photos and videos, you see the object through kind of a white thin cloud. Well, that's like desert dust that was whipping around in the wind. And unfortunately, that was like that. But obviously it's fine. But every night since then, it's been just a completely clear view. So that's kind of a strange twist. So.
And Jeff,
that was a question I had as well too. Is what was the weather like then? Was it a clear sky and just how you described?
Yep, it was pure, bright, black, starry sky. The only thing is there was that lower level, and you can kind of see exactly what I'm talking about if you watch the video and zooming in and out. It's just a relatively thin layer that's just above the surface. But other than that, the sky was completely clear. No clouds, no nothing.
Jeff, you're really familiar with that area. We've kind of, you grew up here, and we've kind of gone up into these mountain ranges before, and you're familiar with like how little there is behind there. There are some native remnants of like past tribes and things of that nature. What are your thoughts of all this, Jeff, having been, born and raised in Vegas?
Ryan, I don't know what to say, because I'm just so fascinated, because, most of my life living there, I mean, besides just everything you've heard of Area 51, I never saw UFOs or anything like that. It's just recently, I mean, it was the Steve Barone video that he captured over Little Red Rock there that really drew my attention. And as me and you have gone and looked at the petroglyphs up in that area, they're really fascinating, and there's some that are kind of undescribable, almost to are they depicting an alien in some of these petroglyphs out there? And so I find it very fascinating that most of these UFOs that I'm seeing videos of are over that area. So it makes me wonder what is going on right there, and is there some importance there, or I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. That's why I'm so fascinated. I mean, you guys got me away from the Golden Knights hockey game to hear this, because I got to know more. I got to know what the hell is going on in that area to have this keep occurring, because Steve Barone keeps putting out videos as well. He captures them over and over in that area. So I'm just really fascinated, and I'm so happy that you're sharing this with us, Scott. I can't tell you how happy I am about this.
Oh, awesome.
And Scott, I think, what's so funny is the last time Jeff was in town, which was not that long ago, we were actually discussing this, and we were talking about how you can see lights on certain nights, and they're in places where it's absolutely impossible for any vehicle or object, or even a low-flying aircraft would not try to. These mountains are fairly rugged, and the way the lights appear, manifest, hover, and disappear seems either at absolute best, it is a technology that I'm unfamiliar with. And I guess that the strangest thing for me is, what are their motives? Or what is it?
Ryan, I don't know. I mean, my mind is just spinning right now. But you're so right about that. And I got to kind of think, is this our technology? Is it something coming out of Area 51? Because what a perfect place to be able to, take things out and experiment with certain type of crafts, because in Las Vegas, the sky is very bright there. I mean, you used to live here, Ryan, in Salt Lake City, where I live now. And basically, and I'm sure you know this too, Scott, you go travel to any other city, and it's pretty dark, every city at nighttime. Las Vegas is a different story. Las Vegas is very bright. There's all kinds of lights there. So most people are not looking in the sky. Most people are not looking for strange objects in the sky. And when you do, can you really identify it because of all the things that happen in Las Vegas? So I think it's a perfect place for, if it's one of our crafts, as far as like Black Ops Project or something like that, it's a perfect place to fly it, because, you can disguise it very easily in the sky there. So again, my mind's just spinning right now on what is this and where did it come from?
And Scott, we have a mutual contact who has some upper military brass intelligence connections. And basically, when we were asking questions and asked if he could run some of this up the flagpole and get back to us, his response was kind of strange and hard for me to believe, because he claimed that it was a exotic propulsion test from the Creech Air Force Base. Now, what I find odd about that is over there near Indian Springs and Creech, that's a very small town. And I would think that if anybody saw anything remotely like this, it would make news. However, I haven't talked to anybody in that area who's seen anything like this. So, I mean, can we believe everything? Not really. Or
No.
what, it's so tough. And of course, Nellis came forward very quickly, which surprised me. They came right out and said we had nothing to do with it and we didn't see anything.
That's one base I'm very familiar with is the Creech one, because I've sat many nights out in that desert observing that area, and I'm going to tell you what, I've never seen anything come or leave from that place one bit, and I've spent many, many nights out there putting eyes on that the whole time, not looking away, and again, I've never seen anything come from that base. I do know it's one of the top drone bases in the world, and so it's a very interesting place. But again, I've never seen anything leave there. I've never, I've been deep into the desert there, basically in Area 54, and again, I've never seen anything that I would say they're flying anything out of that area. But again, I think this is the perfect playground for them to fly and test things out in the open. And, before you guys started this interview, you guys brought up the lights over Arizona, the triangle craft over Arizona. And I'm sure you guys are aware that it was first spotted over Henderson before it was ever spotted in Arizona. So I constantly wonder, too, is that something that is made from this earth? And I don't know. There's a lot of questions.
Well, in my opinion, when you compare all the different sightings that happened in the last week, around that 1 or 2 day period, where they were, what they looked like, and then of course with what I saw as well, I think the Creech explanation is just, if that's what somebody said, it's entirely a deflection of some sort, because it just doesn't make sense with all of the different photos and videos that were captured that would be what that individual was saying it would be or was. That just kind of smells funny to me.
That was my initial thought. It seemed tantalizing at first, but it made zero sense, especially, the angle, and to report that I just have a hard time believing that.
And I actually kind of disagree with the Las Vegas area, or even just the nearby mountains would be a perfect playground for Area 51 type experimentation or whatever, because it certainly would be okay, in a nice place, but do they really need this place? They already have a huge complex with absolutely nothing around it in every direction for oftentimes 100 miles. Why would they even need to risk doing something experimental-wise, even if it's only fairly close to, say, the large population area? I mean, that's just my thought. But
that's a good question, I think. Why would they risk it? But then again, maybe they're trying to see what the response is. I mean, I know, Ryan, you just did a show on Project Bluebeam, and I did as well. And so, I have thoughts that they're actually trying to get the public conditioned for the UFOs now, so maybe they can pull a Project Bluebeam off. And so this is where I'm wondering as well, too, is this something that they're doing intentionally to get the public talking about it and believing in the crafts because they've been denying it for so long? I mean, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Ryan or Scott?
Go for it, Scott.
Okay. I think, that could be, more of a kind of a step in the stairs, kind of thing towards, what you just said.
It is eerily reminiscent of the Phoenix lights, especially the color, the way it hovered and didn't move, the usual players came out and tried to explain it away as these flares, which that I doubt that it just didn't pass the smell test, right? The sniff test.
Right.
And, there are a number of defense contractors in that secretive base 75 miles north of where you live. And they never, like you said, they really don't need to come down here. There's a reason that base is so massive. It's not small sized. They've been working on that base for over 60 years, and they have all of the area and places to do things that I don't want to get into it, but I mean, there's no reason to come this close to the playground.
Right. There's not only is it massive, but in every direction, it's endless land where there's nothing. So,
and it's not easy accessible either. It's super hard to get out into that area. So your average person is not going to venture out in there. It's just people like, me and some of my friends that are very eager to find stuff out that will journey out into those areas. But to get deep into the base where they're doing this stuff, you can't even get there. So that's out of the question. So, I mean, you're right. They have the perfect playground right there. But if they want to see the public's reaction, then maybe that's where they do kind of bring it out into this area. I'm not sure,
And, things are not always what they appear. And unfortunately, with Area 51 and, Nellis and a bunch of the other bases, there is kind of a muddled history of people claiming to have seen things or worked on projects. Charles Hall comes to mind, of course, Bob Lazar. Jeff, you have some interesting information on Bob Lazar. Could you share that with Scott and kind of explain your connection to Bob?
Yeah, I didn't really know who he was at first at the time. This was back in 1988 and 1989. My best friend at the time, his mom was one of the top psychiatrists in town in Las Vegas, and she's very well known. And this guy would come over to her house, and we would get kicked out of the house, and we didn't really care. We kind of knew who Bob was because he actually was on the news for his rocket cars and stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And so he would come over, and he had this amazing Corvette with the roll cage in there, and he had this technology to where he created this where it jammed the radar. And basically, he could type into his computer or whatever in the Corvette what he wanted the radar for the police radar to read. And so he could be doing 150 in his Corvette and have it typed in for 55 miles an hour if he wanted to. And so we would get kicked out of the house. And again, we didn't care. We'd go out and start looking at his Corvette. We're two 18-year-old kids that are just like, wow, check this thing out. This is absolutely amazing. And then months down the road is when everything busted out with George Knapp and everything about him, being a whistleblower for Area 51, and it was like, holy cow, that's him.
Wow.
And, she always claimed that they were just friends, and so at the time I believed it, but, it was years and years later that I started to really think about it and go, you know what, maybe that was her client, because he was dealing with a lot of different stuff at that time that he talks about, being shot out, especially after he turned whistleblower. But there was a lot of emotional stuff that he was dealing with. So maybe he was actually there as a client seeing her, and that's why we were being kicked out of the house. So it was very interesting. And, I remember walking past him, several times as he was going in and we were going out. Never really talked to him because, again, I had no idea who he was going to become in the future. And, so it was very amazing and very interesting, I think.
That's a really cool story. I'm familiar with the Bob Lazar story, and I find it really fascinating.
Scott, have you heard? This is sort of an interesting. The only reason I bring this up is this is something that happened in that same desert. It's the same basic angle of or direction where those lights showed up. Have you heard of the story behind the M cave?
I don't think so.
Okay, there was. It's interesting because you can do a quick YouTube search of it, and the information that's out there, it's just enough to make it super weird with, like, of course, the abrupt, open-ended ending, which nobody knows what happened to this individual. But there was a hiker who kind of took pride in going way out into these outback areas, and he came across a cave in the shape of an M, and something about the cave and energy. He said that he felt strangely. He didn't want to go in it. He mentioned the possibility of something otherworldly possibly living in this cave. And he posted this on his YouTube channel, and he kind of got shamed into, why didn't you go in there? Well, he went back for another round into the M cave, and it was in this general direction, this vicinity that we're talking about. And he never came back. He was that was the end. So we don't know if he went in the M cave, if he came out of the M cave. He was a Las Vegas local. He still has family here in Vegas. And yeah, it's an interesting quick Google search and kind of a quick, tidy rabbit hole if you want to go down it sometime.
So nobody knows where this M cave is then, apparently.
It is a general vicinity, yes. Like as far
okay, but not exactly.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly right. Nobody knows exactly where it's at, and people have gone back through his YouTube footage trying to find it, and it's kind of eerie. It's kind of eerie, and not only is it eerie, but there's inconsistencies in the actual story itself. So they did find his cell phone at a strange open mine shaft, and the open mine shaft had some inconsistencies to the video where he posted video of this open mine shaft before. Others went to that same mine shaft thinking, well, it's obvious he fell down the mine shaft, and the mine shaft had changed. The entrance there had wood that was missing, and it was obvious that planks had been broken, but he was not at the bottom of the mine shaft. So there are some really strange parts of the story that don't make sense.
Sounds like somebody almost planted the cell phone there to make it look like he fell in the mine shaft. But
that's exactly what if you have any kind of investigative skill at all, that's exactly what it seems like it was planted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not surprising, but interesting.
Yeah, it is super interesting. And, it's unfortunate that people like Bob Lazar and Charles Hall was recently in town. It's unfortunate that it seems like anybody that talks about this stuff, at least in the past, and they had any kind of clearance whatsoever, are just brushed under the rug as being not even whistleblowers, but seeking attention, where the opposite tends to happen. When you say these things, these guys that claim to have worked for these installations and facilities and claim to have seen something out of the ordinary, they get the exact opposite effect of what anybody thinks they would be trying to get. And it makes total sense to me why Bob tries to kind of stay out of the limelight. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think, and I'm very appreciative of Bob Lazar and what he did and what he represents. And I do think he's received some level of vindication as the years have gone by, but not nearly enough. At least that's my opinion. So, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
Oh, what's that, Jeff?
I agree 100%. I think Bob has been vindicated in a lot of different things, and the backlash that he's taken from coming out and talking about this and exposing it, I think was not what he was expecting. And, one reason why he, basically tried to hide after all of that, it changed his life and not the way that somebody would expect, like a good thing. It was definitely a negative aspect in his life, I think, once he exposed what he did. But I do think he has been vindicated in a lot of different ways from what he exposed, especially if you go back to some of those original interviews that he did with George Knapp and what he talks about, and then what they're talking about today. I definitely believe he's been vindicated in a lot of ways.
And that base, even the real stuff that has come out of this area is pretty fascinating. Even in the late 50s and early 60s, DARPA was working on, these new frontier craft, as they called them. One was Project Orion. And we're talking about back then, even nuclear powered spaceships, which they were trying to get to Mars. And this was back in the late 50s and 60s. So it's so hard when you're in this realm of thought and you see craft and you're trying to figure out what it might be, because, these propulsion technologies are moving in all kinds of different directions. You have the nuclear, you have the anti-gravity, there's so many. They have these new liquid light engines that they're working on, which makes zero sense to my little monkey brain, but it is unreal, the classified technologies that they're working on. And yet then you have Elon Musk, his rockets are blowing up. So it's like, what do you believe? It just seems like, can we believe anything? Or what indeed is taking place? Do we believe what the government tells us? Do we believe what we see on TV? Or do you believe what is slowly leaked, from these declassified programs? And I mean, that freaks me out, that in the 50s we're working on, nuclear powered spacecraft. I mean, it's just mind blowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the the possibility that Vegas is encountering something that may not be military? Do you think that is a possibility, Scott?
About what happened, say, last week?
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely think it's a possibility. I wish I knew what it was, and possibly someday we will. But I personally don't think it's something that can be explained away with any of those typical overutilized canned explanations. Obviously, it's not a balloon, it's not flares, it's not Chinese lanterns. And I also don't think it was either of the other more standard answers of it being our military testing new technology or it being another country's unknown technology. Those seem to be the answers that a lot of people just spit out involuntarily almost. Because I just think it's crazy to think that we or another country would test or send unknown technology over areas where there's people, let alone heavily populated areas, just because the risk of something going wrong or becoming compromised is far too great. There'd be absolutely no reason to do that. But
yeah, that's the truth. I agree. The strangest thing to me is the location. Why would you be testing something that's supposed to be hidden or veiled behind secrecy in such a populated area? So that kind of, in my opinion, that sort of rules out the military thing, unless it's like some guy's bachelor party and they wanted to see the Vegas Strip. It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it just drives me crazy when, say some of these Navy videos and whatnot that have been released in the last few years, somebody says, oh, it's Russia or it's China. They got this thing they're flying. Yeah, China, Russia really wants to fly this hyper technological, vehicle or whatever you want to call it within 20 miles of the border of the United States, when absolutely something could happen to where that technology would be compromised and the U.S. would get it. So why in the world would a foreign country be doing that? They wouldn't.
I agree. And, with 8,000, I think it's 8,000 square kilometers that Nellis has. And then we have, of course, Area 51, who, as far as UFO people go, that's a top destination. I mean, there's so many eyewitness reports of craft hovering over those nearby mountains, which could be similar to this one. However, when you're that close to a U.S. government facility, I highly doubt that it's extraterrestrial unless there's some working agreement, which brings in like a whole other enigma.
Right. And you certainly hear a lot about that too, but
yeah, it is a strange one. I have a contact who claims, and this was back when John Lear was still alive. John Lear was backing this up, and there was basically a contact that said that there were, in fact, some of Lear's stuff was a little bit out there, so take this with a grain of salt, but he said that the extraterrestrials preferred to be in the deserts around Las Vegas because they liked to go into town from time to time, and that they would dress up in burqas and hit the casinos and have security with them, which was expected. And, people would just think that they were Middle Eastern sheiks, and they'd be able to go into the casinos, see the sights, hear the sounds, smell the smells, and they really enjoyed that. And that there was an array of tunnels underneath the strip, which would facilitate this. And at the time, my wife was working down on the strip on a casino that they were remodeling. And she's in development. She's now up here in our neck of the woods, Scott, kind of developing homes up here. But the interesting thing is, she said, oh, that's super far-fetched. And so did her project manager buddy. And then about a month later, I got a call from her friend, and he said, oh man, I got to tell you this. We were behind a casino working with our gear, and one of our machines fell through into a tunnel. And we called the city and told them about it. They didn't know about it. They didn't know what we could do about it. And so they basically covered it all up, so to speak. They had within the legal parameters, but they had to kind of put everything back together the way it was, even though nobody knows where this tunnel went, what it was used for, why it was being maintained. But it was in the contract that they had to leave everything the way they found it. And it kind of just was reminiscent to me of the crazy old Vegas stories of, John Lear, and whether this was really for extraterrestrials or could they just be mob tunnels, to just easily get elites or higher ups into the casino. I don't know. But there are, in fact, those tunnels. And one of the entrances, I've shown it to Jeff, is down near City Center. And that's the one they fell through. But there were some others over there near the SLS and on Sahara. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what the future holds for Vegas, but the past is definitely very interesting.
Yeah. Well, John Lear was certainly dialed in, that's for sure. So.
Yeah, he was an enigma, man. Very, very interesting guy. Even in his later years, when I would talk to him and he'd have, really kind of stuff that nobody should have to go through at those ages, he just took it like a stud. Like he's just like, oh, that's just life, whatever. And most people at those ages just want to retire peacefully and calmly, and he'd have all of this drama going on, and he'd just be like, it's no big deal in the bigger scheme of things. Anyway, anything else that we want to delve into, Jeff, as far as this puzzle?
No, I think we covered quite a bit. Nothing I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Man, I think you did a really good job of explaining what you witnessed, Scott. I can't appreciate you enough for coming on here and explaining it all. It kind of puts everything into perspective. And yeah, man, stay in touch and reach out, keep those eyes to the skies, because you are in a very unique position there, and your view into the night skies is phenomenal.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, I will get in touch with you when the time comes. So thank you for having me on.
So knowledgeable. I'm glad that he was able to concisely explain what he and his partner saw that night and why they recorded the amazing footage they gathered. In my opinion, Scott Tappe has the best footage out there, and I've seen quite a bit of it, had quite a few different clips sent to me. What I like about all the various clips is that we are able to hopefully triangulate and use timestamps and kind of gather more information. I don't think that this is over yet. I'm going to continue to talk to Scott. There is a long history of covert involvement at some of these strange facilities. We have Charles Hall describing an ET race called the Tall Whites, who had, according to him, a base in the northern end of the Indian Springs Valley near a military base. We have, of course, the testimony of Bob Lazar, who claims to have been working on reverse engineered alien technology. And there is an array of tunnels who a variety of people have come together, explored, and told incredible stories about. And many of these are claimed to lead to deep underground military bases and structures. Skeptics have scoffed at any lights in the sky whatsoever, but I'll tell you, these lights captured by Scott and a variety of other Vegas locals have everyone scratching their heads. Mission accomplished. We caught something that cannot be explained. Kudos to Scott for doing it, pulling out his phone and taking the time. We may not know what was witnessed that night, but we are getting a better idea of what wasn't witnessed that night. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling